This is The Behavioral Divide, brought to you by Avantis Investors, where we bring together both academic research and real-world financial advice to uncover insights that may help us make better financial decisions. I am Jeremy Thornton with Avantis, here with our host, Professor Hal Hershfield. So Hal, episode 10 feels a bit like a milestone, and I think this is a great one that certainly lives up to this feeling of a milestone episode. We're talking about negotiations. The interview you did, I thought, was truly fascinating. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your takeaways from the interview?
Yeah, so the topic is negotiations. We've got Scott Colangelo on the advisor side. He's the chairman and managing partner of Prime Capital Investment Advisors. And on the academic side, we have Daylian Cain. He's a senior lecturer in negotiations, leadership, and ethics at the Yale School of Management. He's been teaching negotiations for close to 2 decades. And a couple of things that were super interesting. He brought up this idea of elegant trades, and the idea being that it's not just about a equal 50-50 split, but I think the way he put it is maybe there's times where I win big, but you lose small. And I thought that concept is really interesting. As you'll see, he's talking about the idea of uncovering value and going in prepared to understand what is it that I want, and also what is it that they want, and working together. There's this funny moment that arises where he talks about negotiations as collaborations. And Scott says, we have these fights. And then Scott quickly realizes, well, maybe it's more than that. I think one of the big points that Scott brings up on the advisor side is you've got these internal negotiations that happen within the company, that happen when you're dealing with contract partners. And then you've also got the negotiations of trying to figure out how do you bring a client on board and what do they want. And to me, a big takeaway here is advisors can bring a lot of value to clients by helping them understand these elegant trades for their own financial negotiations.
Yeah, I love the elegant trade idea, and just the detail that Daylian shares around that, and how we should think more than just it's either a 50-50 split or it's, hey, I'm trying to win big. There's ways that can be more value, or that can create more value for both sides. So I thought that was really interesting. I also loved that, Scott talked about maybe this is an area that advisors don't get enough guidance on, and that they could use more education from the academic side. And I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do, with this series. So I thought that was great to hear from Scott. So excited to show everyone the episode.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Scott, Daylian, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to this chat about negotiations. And it's funny because when I was thinking about the topic, the first things that come to mind to me are the big things, like between companies, big negotiations, but then also things like getting a raise or buying a house or buying a car. But those are sort of the things that don't happen all that much. And then I realized there's all these other negotiations that we surely face whether it's at home with our spouses or our kids. And what I really want to sort of dial into today is the negotiations that consumers and clients face, especially with regard to financial decisions. And the way I think about it, there's got to be these sort of 2 parts. There's the how do advisors help clients with their own negotiations? And then how do advisors think about the negotiations that they have with clients, right? And so I'd love to sort of dive into those 2 sides of it here. And so I'm gonna kick it off to you first, Daylian, and then I'll go to Scott. But Daylian, you've been teaching negotiations classes at Yale and then beyond for, I think it's close to 20 years, meaning that you must have started when you were 7 or 8, if I'm right about your age. Now, knowing that, one of the questions I have is, what sort of negotiations do everyday consumers face, especially when it comes to these financial decisions? And then I'm going to kick it over to Scott.
Yeah, I mean, the small ones that add up, right? Like in our house, it's do we do food delivery yet again and pay for all of that? Or do we eat more at home and save some money? Who retires when? Who retires first? That's the one that we're talking about. Do we send our kid to public school versus private school? Non-monetary is the big one, is like screen time with your teenager. How much do you allow? How much do they deserve or want or need? So just like everyday things, anytime it's this, like I want this, you want that, and we both need to agree to get moving, that's a negotiation. It's everywhere.
I love that. It's everywhere. And then wait, Scott, before I go to you, just one thing I want to ask about that, Daylian. To what extent do people see all those decisions as negotiations?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the time not. They focus too much on contracts and salary and
Mm.
price as negotiations. They always think of that as a negotiation, but sometimes it's the intangibles. It's about values or time or resources, could be title,
Mm.
freedom. There's family time, personal time, what you're doing in your personal time, where you go and like just so many things. But right, even my own business students, they often think of their job negotiation, and sometimes job negotiations aren't even negotiable at the beginning. And so, what's my class for then? Well, it's because negotiations are everywhere, not just about salary.
All right, Scott, does that map on? I'm curious, like, does that the stuff that Daylian was just saying that it's everywhere? Does it map on to what you're seeing that your clients come to you with? Or are there ever times where they're talking about something and you say, that's a negotiation, but they're not
Yeah, it
seeing
happens
it
all
that
the
way?
time. And, really, we have two clients as an organization, our advisors and consultants and our actual clients. So, and those are wildly
Mm.
different. With advisors, a lot of times, to Dalian's point, it could be compensation contract, those types of issues. And with clients, sometimes it's more of services, resources. What am I getting? And sometimes it's cost. It's in the client side, especially in the retail market. It's not cost is not normally the most important thing. It's normally other things that you're going to offer, and they're looking for value. So
Okay. And are they, I mean, and that is when they think of working with you, but then let's say when they are working with you, are they bringing up some of these other things,
Right.
or is this almost like an untapped space where an advisor could be bringing more value to them by thinking of some of these everyday decisions as
Yeah, I mean, it's a
negotiations that could be
competitive
improved?
marketplace for clients. So I do think that's a constant evolution with advisors and ourselves as organization. Like, what is the value we're offering? Because it is, even if it's an unspoken negotiation, it is a negotiation. I mean, they're sizing you up. They're trying to figure out if they trust you. In addition to that, they're looking at price. You're trying to show the things you can offer. I mean, it's an ongoing negotiation. And I do think this, like, again, a lot of it is very unspoken in the client side, and it's very verbalized and spoken in the advisor to company side.
Mm,
And a lot of it is
that's an
internal
interesting.
too, right? Like a lot of it is not,
Sure.
it's not when I work with an automotive company, it's less about getting them to sell some car at some price. It's more internal. It's like
That's right.
sales versus
Mm,
service, the suits versus the unions, marketing versus engineers. It's all like anytime you're collaborating.
It's a constant fight. To Dalian's
yeah.
point, I hate to say fight. It's a constant resource grab when it's internal. Like, hey, we need more of this, we need more of that.
Yeah.
And it's only because it's nothing malicious. There's no bad intent. They want to provide the best outcome and get the best performance in their department or their role. And they also want to see that they have
Right.
similar or somewhat equal resources to be able to achieve that.
Well, I just want to say, like, I think it's kind of revealing, right? That, Dalian said, anytime there's a collaboration, and Scott, you immediately said it's constant fight. And then you said, well, but it's not just a fight. But I think that's totally speaks to the fact that we often think of these things as if it's you want this, I want that. But, to that end, I mean, I'm curious here, Dalian, is that sort of trade-off thinking something that's detrimental? Or maybe I can ask it even bigger. What are some of the big insights that you taught? What are some of the big tips here that I think can actually, or that you think could actually make a difference in how these things go?
Yeah, so many mistakes that people make. I'll list a few and then dig in on one of them. But people talk about money first, even when it's the most important thing. It's often very contentious, so it's not where you should lead. It's often a fight, so you don't want to lead the conversation with a fight. I often say, even if it's the most important thing, you should probably be talking about it last. People don't prepare enough. I could talk for ages about that and how to
Hmm.
prepare, but they don't pre-think about tough trade-offs. And trade-offs are hard, but don't be making them at the negotiation table in your head. Like that's even worse. People take crumbs when they shouldn't. Especially they're tempted when their industry's being when competition is growing and margins are shrinking. So yeah, pies are shrinking. I get that. That's not fun. But you should be still getting half the pie. If you're getting a crumb, the other side should be getting a crumb too. And often I don't see that. They feel the pressure, and what happens is the other side shrinks the pie and takes most of it. So it's like a double whammy. My whole thing that I teach, I haven't invented it. I just spend a lot of time teaching on it, is about this idea of elegant trades. So it's where one side wins big and the other side loses small. So if I give you a $10,000 discount, that would move you, but I just lost 10,000. And so we're looking for other levers. I'll give you two examples, if I may, one from the class and one
Yeah.
from real life. So the classroom example, so basically the meta of this is I'm looking for something valuable to you, cheap to me. But like win-wins are great if you can find them, but let's also look for elegant trades. And so in the classroom, I'd put two people up in the middle and they're fighting over 20 poker chips, and it's not worth a fortune, but they're worth real money. Like I let them cash them in and they just got to get a deal. And I don't care if it's 20 zip and 15.5, as long as it adds up to 20, they get paid. And most of the time, almost always, they go 11-9, 12-8. There's some jockeying, but most of them end up on 10-10, and they're very proud of that. And what's not so great, I mean, it's great that they got a deal, but I say, well, what if you care about these poker chips? What if it's worth $1 each to you, but they were worth $10 each to her? Should we do 10-10? No, she should get all the chips, cash them in, and split the money later, right? And so the important idea there, though, is we should figure out what issue, like of all the issues, who cares about them the most? If you care about an issue more than me, I should lose. And so I teach this on day one, that I'm going to teach you how to be a good winner, but a smart loser as well. You're not losing just for efficiency's sake. You're providing value to get paid. The real world example of this, I was in the Middle East 3 weeks ago. I was in a room where I was for sure the least wealthy, powerful person by far. It wasn't close. And they were talking to me about some deals. And one of them came across, I don't want to get into the details, but I'll just say this. It was a large company and small company, and they were fighting over risk sharing. There was a very low likelihood of a really bad thing with the joint venture. And they settled on 50-50 risk sharing, and were kind of proud of that and asked me what I thought. And I'd only heard this for a little minute, and I thought, knee-jerk reaction was, I think that sounds terrible. It's maybe good. I'd have to hear more. But like, you don't both think about risk the same way. And maybe somebody hates risk less or is better equipped to handle the risk, and perhaps they should be taking more of it. In fact, it was a bankruptcy risk. So rather than normally the big company can take on the risk, in this case, the small company definitely should. If they're a $10 million company, pay the small company $20 million to take on a little bankruptcy risk. Don't let the multi-billion-dollar company take any bankruptcy risk. And so it was, again, an example of fighting over issues and perhaps splitting on an issue rather than being elegant and smart about it.
And I think it's fascinating to think about. We might consider something that's fair as 50-50, but if you start thinking that sort of elegant trade mindset, you realize quickly that's very, I'm just thinking right now, I've just had a conversation with my kids yesterday about, what's fair doesn't mean everybody always get the same amount of stuff, but now, Scott, I mean, hearing that, is that a mindset or is that a sort of perspective that you have applied, or could you imagine applying it? And if so, I'm curious where, but not only just with your clients or teaching them about it, how does that
I really like the
play out
term
for you?
elegant trade. For us, it comes down to alignment. Like I'll give you an example. If I'm looking at, we just recently had an acquisition that we did close. A lot of times when we're doing these acquisitions, to his point about an elegant trade, they're looking for the highest number, headline number. And I'm looking for alignment. And that doesn't mean I don't want to pay them well. I absolutely do. The worst thing I could do is win big. They take a much smaller deal than what they can actually get out in the market in long term. Then they learn that over time, and you have a contentious, unhealthy relationship. I don't want that, and we don't want that for them. But from an alignment standpoint, more times than not, they want a bigger number. And I'm actually like, listen, I'll give you a bigger number than you even want, but I want it to be a back-end earnout so that we both win. I want you to make way more money if we make way more money. I think it's short-sighted on one hand to say, hey, we're gonna do great when we join you and we're gonna grow. Okay, well, if you believe that, then let's build you a model where we don't have a massive amount of cash out front, which then we can invest in people to help you grow, right? And then pay you out a lot more on the backside. So I don't know if that's exactly what Daylian is referencing as a elegant trade. But to me, that's what we look at when we're looking at deals like that. And I love that term. I love the elegant trade term. I'm going to steal that.
I mean, Daylian, does that sound?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, that's very smart to me. I'm curious your reaction to that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it sure could be, especially if you're doing something that's valuable to one side, cheap to the other. You're kind of creating value, right? It's minus 50 to me, but it's plus 300 to you. Just compensate me. Give me like 150 to do it, and we're both better off. And ideally, these elegant trades are ones where you're thinking in terms of like, how can we do better than the competition? Like, for example, some consultants, when I ask them, why would I do business with you? They have this terrible answer of, well, it's about relationships and knowledge and people. It's like, you don't think your competitors have relationships and knowledge and people, right? So you're trying to make elegant trades that are valuable to one side. And not, when I say cheap, I mean, I am in a very good position to provide this, and I can provide this strategically better than the competition. And if Scott's doing that and he's very good at what he does, then that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Scott, do you ever think about these? I mean, I know that you're just hearing this concept of elegant trade here, but it sounds like you're kind of doing it. I'm curious if you ever educate. I know I've sort of circled around this before, but I want to kind of drill down on it. Do you ever try to educate clients about this in thinking about the way that they make their money decisions? Like, I could only imagine, sitting in your shoes, that would be something that would bring a lot of value to them if you're telling them about elegant trades, if you're telling them about uncovering what really matters when they go about their own negotiations, whether it's within their family or at work or in their spending and saving and so on.
I can give you two quick examples that come to mind. I don't know that I never ever use it as a parlay to try to educate them on what they can do in their personal fees. I'm trying to manage my own personal fees, but effectively. But
That's
two
good.
quick
That's fair.
examples. One, like, for example, on the retirement plan industry, we had really poor participation, participants making bad decisions, costs were high. And, we really talked a lot about plan health internally and with our clients. We're like, listen, you don't want the record keeper to cut their fee in half. You want them to have enough margin to give you sources. We want participants to have good pricing, but also have good resources. So they participate. If they participate, they're going to save, which is going to put money in the funds, and the funds also are making money and they're contributing to the record keeper. And it's sort of like this circle of everybody wins. If we can get participants on track and focus on that more than just cost savings, then fundamentally everybody wins. Not one group, not two groups, 7, 8, 9 groups, even if they're doing it at a little lower margin.
Yeah.
And then, so on that side, you're educating sort of from an institutional standpoint, us to committees. On the retail side, we'll go to companies that are partners, like fund companies, ETF companies, and say, hey, we'll send you $2 billion, but, give us a special share class. And then we can go to our clients and say, hey, they're still doing very well because it's a big, trade, but we want to make sure that, we're working behind the scenes with negotiating to add value to you, that we're not just taking stuff off the shelf, that we're digging deeper for you. So that's sort of what I was talking to you earlier about, like, hey, we're bringing resources and we are negotiating, trying to get better pricing. That's an example of cost. It's not always about cost. And fundamentally, I want my partners to win. I want them to make more money. I mean, I think that's a real short-sighted thing. And I think in a lot of negotiations, I think it's a very short-sighted trend in the investment industry where we have advisors just trying to lower everyone else's costs so they don't have to lower their own. And I think it's extremely short-minded, and it has damaged the retirement industry, and I think it's damaged the mutual fund industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think there's some myopia there to see how that especially plays out over time. So, okay, let me kick it back to you, Daylian. Practically speaking, what's like 1 or 2 tips on how to get to those elegant trades? The concept makes a ton of sense to me. And then I'm thinking about putting into practice.
Well, people already know basically what they want and why. What I encourage them to do is figure out what order. In other words, there's 8 issues here, prioritize them. I would even, if we had more time, try to convince them to score them. I try to think of how they trade off each other. And that's not easy, How do you put a value on your values with financial planning, retirement? All these things are tough, but you don't want to be doing that while you're negotiating with your partners. You want to be doing that like 2 weeks ahead of time. And so you're prioritizing your scorecarding. Sometimes though, some of the most uninteresting tip I can give people is just during a negotiation, I want you to practice walking, or I want you to prepare to walk away. And I don't mean no deal, see you never. I mean, if we imagine this as you're in the middle of the boxing ring, don't stay in the middle of the ring for 10 rounds. Go to the corner, have a glass of water, take a break. In other words, plan for thoughtful pauses. Most people are already decent negotiators if they're their best selves, but in order to be the best selves, they need to take breaks. I could give a lot of other tips, but that's a quick one. Just plan for thoughtful
Can I ask
pauses.
Daylian a question, Hal?
Kenneth,
And Daylian, one of the things I
Yeah, go
struggle
for
with
it,
when
go
I
for it.
do negotiations, especially internally, and I hate to call them negotiations, but they tend to be where an advisor or consultant has a concern or a need, but they're afraid of conflict. Like they won't ask, you know what I mean? And so I don't know where I stand. And it's like, I could solve it by just doing what I think, you know what I mean, and trying to appease them a little bit. But do you ever, I mean, I hate to say this, but do you ever try to help the other side win so that it's a healthier long-term relationship? And how do you overcome these people that are afraid of conflict? Because I struggle with it. Sometimes you don't even recognize they're afraid to ask. Because you don't know what their ultimate goal is. Like, how do you make that a healthier transaction?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So one of the things I said a moment ago was you got to prepare and prioritize. And often the most difficult negotiation partner is one who's not prepared because they know what they want and why, but they don't know what order. They certainly don't have a scorecard. And so you kind of have to take them through it. And it connects to what you said about like, how do you make them offers that are good for them? If you and I are working together and we're just talking over a glass of bourbon, then I think we'll figure it out. But if you and I don't have that rapport or you're just not prepared, one of the tools any negotiation class would teach you is something called a multiple equivalent offer. Let me give you a sense of it and how you might use it. I come up with 2 packages, A and B. I don't tell you what they cost me, but I do tell you that my financial team has made sure that I can do A or B, either one. Like I literally don't care what you pick, Scott, A or B. And so in other words, instead of offering you a package, I offer you 2 and see how you feel about them. And you might say, I don't know, neither one of them works, Daylian. Okay, well, which do you hate the least, Scott? Like, where should we start? I know I got to improve. In other words, when you really don't understand their preferences and you haven't built that rapport, or when they're not forthcoming, rather than just ask questions and make offers, make multiple offers and see how they react. And then maybe they'll say, well, B isn't terrible. Okay, why not B? By the way, what's so nice about this tool is when you make multiple equivalent offers, you're protected because literally you don't care which they pick. So if they get it wrong or misrepresent or are confused, if they like B, but they pick A, who loses? Well, them and you. I think it's better if you can provide the client value. So you both want them to pick the thing, but at least the idea is not to merely to protect yourself. They lose, you don't. It to put up a situation where they feel more comfortable being forthcoming. Because during a negotiation, I have a zillion questions, but most people think, "Oh, Daylian's going to get advantage over me. I shouldn't reveal my cards," kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
this makes them more comfortable to reveal because it puts you in a place of being kind of an objective advisor. Like, I literally don't care whether you pick A or B. What's best for you?
And for those listening, there's a giant picture behind Dalian's face that has all of his cards face up, so you can
Right.
literally see them.
I never thought
Right.
of the face-up metaphor. That's interesting, where you probably can't. I like that. What's interesting, I have my students gather cards and get professional poker players to sign them. So in the fine print, each one is signed by a poker pro, and I'm working on a second deck over there. But yeah, I'm a poker nut. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, real fast. Last 2 questions. Let me start with you, Daylian. Anything that you would want Scott and other advisors to know from the research/teaching side
Yeah.
about negotiations that maybe they don't?
Well, certainly I could go even right to advising first. I did
Great.
a lot of research on conflicts of interest, so I can say something about that. A lot of
Yeah.
advisors think that conflicts of interest, like they have the wrong mental model of how it affects professional advisors. Imagine, let's not pick on financial advisors. Imagine the doctor deciding between suggesting drug A or B. B is good for the pocketbook because of ties to industry or whatever. It's just a B.
Sure.
But but A is best for my client. Which should I do? That's the prototypical example that people imagine, but that's not what professionals are facing. They're trying to help their client. And I suspect that Scott and his people are trying to help clients. But the situation that a normal advisor faces is, I know that B helps myself or I have a higher markup or margin there. The question is, what is best for my client, A or B? Oh, well, both. Like, it's controversial, and look at all the good things for my client about B. Maybe I can have my cake and eat it too. So that's what the research on conflicts of interest has shown, is that the problems for well-meaning professionals, not just corrupt individuals trying to make a buck, but people honestly trying to be objective. But what we've learned is, if you pay people to be biased, it's like, basically it's hard to be objective when you're paid not to be. So that's what the research I work on focuses.
Great. All right, Scott, final question to you. Anything that you want Daylian and other researchers like me to know from the practice side? Anything that you could even say, you guys got to study this more. Here's something I noticed. Pick up
No,
on
I
this.
don't know that I have any specific question more than a comment, in that we are wildly ill-equipped in the advisor industry to handle negotiations properly because of the money factor. And I do think, like, just that one exercise he shared, giving them two options, that it just makes so much sense, and I've never done it. You know what I mean? I think there's a massive need for it in our industry. I think there's a massive need for more education and a little bit more academic approach to these things. I've gotten more out of this than Daylian has on this call. I think there's a big market there, especially as the industry has transitioned from more of a commission-based to a fee-based, where I think most people now are 99% in alignment with their clients. So, but yeah, there's a void. We get educated on securities. We get educated on, proper compliance-based communication, all those types of things. We don't have training in communication in this specific topic. And this has been a really great experience to be part of. And I'm super appreciative to be part of it.
Scott, look me up on LinkedIn, Daylian.
Maybe we can collaborate on something. It'd be fun. So, yeah, it'd be fun.
I like that collaboration. All right, awesome, guys. This is great. Daylian, Scott, thank you guys so much. Really fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Congrats on the podcast. You're awesome, Hal.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Thanks, Scott. Nice to meet you all.